We're here in Sacramento for UFC on Fox 22. The show just ended, and I'm here with Dave Doyle and Dave Meltzer. And it was a really great show. So let's go over all the fights and talk about what your favorite moments were.
I mean, I think
it's easy.
Yeah, favorite one's easy. Look, Urijah Faber's final career fight. I mean, it's so rare that anyone gets to go out like this in combat sports. There are so many sad stories of fighters just hang on too long and don't get the hint. But not only did Urijah Faber know when it was time to go out, but the way everything just came in line for him. He stayed long enough to come out here to the new arena in Sacramento, which is really a beautiful building, in front of his hometown fans. It was absolutely electric. And then the fight itself, that first round, it was like we went into a time machine back to the WEC. So everything about that fight was fantastic, and I'm sure Dave feels the same way.
Yeah, it was just really, it was fun because, to me, Urijah represents like the whole evolution of this sport, because he came in when the sport barely existed, and he stayed until it got to where it is now, and he's been a top guy. I mean, like, when he was announced, they said, like, number 3 in the weight class. Pretty impressive considering, the longevity and everything. So he is going out on top. Right. I mean, not top, but as a legitimate star on his own terms and in the right place. And it was, that feeling when he won and when he came out and everything like that, that's like, the highlight feeling that you get in, the best of UFC. So I was really glad to see it. I was glad for him. Again, who ends their career like that in UFC? There's not too many. I mean, St. Pierre didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
St. Pierre was just a weird, muddled thing. Yeah. Anderson's had losses. Liddell went out on a loss. And other guys will, it's usually not a happy time.
Right.
And the only
this
other,
was
yeah.
100% happy,
The only thing I can think of in recent years trying to rack my brain for this was Mark Munoz went out in a win.
Yes.
He went home to the Philippines
Right.
and got to fight in his homeland and win like that. But, I mean, this happens so rarely that those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah,
And
most don't get to go out on a win at all.
absolutely. And I got to give a little shout out to Brad Pickett, too, just for being so tough to kind of roll with that, because a lot of guys would have been finished by what Faber was dishing out tonight.
Yeah.
And giving him a real fight. Like, Urijah didn't go out with an easy fight. I mean, he got knocked down. He took his lumps. I mean, he clearly won the fight, and he dominated, 90% of the fight, but it was a real fight. He didn't, it wasn't like a gimme.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where he's just like, okay, here's a guy, and he beat him in 2 minutes with a choke. You know what I mean? It was nothing like that.
That would have been disappointing, actually, so I'm glad that they did this matchup.
Yeah. He was a great opponent for this match. Everything was perfect, if you really think about it. And for, I mean, it would have been nice to have a finish, but in the end, I think the fact that the guy was tough enough to stay for the 3 rounds, it told that story. It told that story too. And the last, whatever it was, 10, 15 seconds, the way the crowd just erupted. I mean, it was really fun to see.
Let's go to the main event. Let's talk about Michelle Waterson's finish at Paige Vanzant.
I mean, Michelle pretty much ruined the party here in Sacramento, didn't she? Team Alpha Male won 3-0 going into that fight. But, I mean, look, Paige has been given some wonderful opportunities based as much on her star potential as her actual, I don't want to put down her talent level because she's talented, but Michelle was telling the truth and saying that she was a little bit green for the position that she's put in. And I mean, it was clear from the get-go that Michelle Waterson is an experienced fighter, a Jackson Wink fighter, someone who's been in all the battles, been through the wars. Anyone who followed Invicta before women were allowed to fight in the UFC knows just the fantastic matches that Waterson had. And she had she showed it. The talent level disparity in there was really something to see.
Her grappling shined as well. She was able to showcase all that Barada's been teaching her. So what did you think of Waterson's performance?
Yeah, I mean, it was, she said it best when she was out here in the sense that she's been training as a fighter for 20 years. She's an experienced fighter, and Paige is not a newcomer, but from an experience level, it was night and day. And you could really see it when they got on the ground, that it was like, Paige is feisty and everything. I mean, so the good thing to say about Paige is she lost the fight, and she came out here and she was smiles, and I'm sure she's going to be down, but it's like she wasn't like, I can't come out here.
She seemed determined to.
I mean, I think that it's like, you know, because you never know how someone's going to react to that kind of a loss. I mean,
Right.
she lost to Rose, but it was a lot longer fight, and Rose was also a lot higher ranked at the time.
Yeah.
This was someone who, you know, maybe she could have beat. She's you know, a little bit heavier and everything like that, but she got outclassed.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like her thing is like, I got to learn more.
Yeah.
You know, so and she does. She has to learn more. It's at 22. You know, this is a sport where, you know, you peak later because there's so many different facets to learn.
Yep.
So she's years and years away from being where she needs to be, and mentally, I think that she's really tough. So, you know, mentally, she may make it. We don't know. You
Yeah.
know, she'll get the chance.
And it's pretty different learning on the job, like learning here in front of everybody instead of getting to go up through, you know, Invicta or other leagues, going around on the circuit. She just came, she had a fight in Invicta, she had a couple of fights, but then she was pretty much just in the UFC right away, so.
Right, I certainly has absolutely no problem handling kind of the stardom aspect of the sport. You know, there's a lot of pressure put on her to, she and Faber were the two fighters who pretty much carried the media obligations going in all throughout this week. So, you know, given how mature she handles pretty much everything that's kind of thrown at her, I don't doubt that, that she'll be back and, you know, maybe they bump her down on the card a little bit and let her work her way back. The thing that's interesting for me that I kind of want to throw at both of you is, where do you think you go with Michelle Waterson from here? Is she? I don't know that she's quite ready to be put into a title fight yet, but
There's a lot of women though in that you know, between like, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 level that she could go against, even like Rose. I was thinking when it was over,
I think that's a good fight,
Rose was
yeah.
kind of like the name that I was thinking of next.
Yeah, that would be an interesting fight. Yeah, I think actually the strawweight division actually really stacked. There's a lot of really good fights. There's a lot of possibilities for her. There's plenty of. She said she just wanted to keep moving up, and there are a lot of people that are ranked. So, what was she ranked before?
11?
11, I think.
11?
Yeah, which seems a little underrated.
A little
at this
underrated.
point,
But she hadn't
yeah.
been- she hadn't
But
been
she
in
hadn't been
UFC.
fighting.
But she hadn't been
Sure.
active for a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, she hadn't been fighting, and most of her wins before was at atomweight. So
Yeah.
you know, she's new in the thing. Even though, yeah, from a skill level, that is too low probably for her.
Yeah. So there's a lot of matchups for her.
Sure.
Speaking of youth, though, when we're talking about Paige, so Sage lost today to Mickey Gall.
Oh,
And
you
he
know,
showed a little bit of he started trash talking in the cage. There's all kinds of little things.
so first thing that kind of comes to mind for me with Mickey, you know, we look at him as like this young guy given a chance who is looking for a fight and all that. He's a legit prospect.
Yeah.
He really is. Like you can't. I know he's fought CM Punk and
Mike Jackson.
and so on. But you know, this is a guy. He's trained by the Miller brothers. Serious about improving as a fighter, and sure, he's still got a long way to go. But every step along the way, he does the right thing, both in terms of what you should be doing with your training, with your career, and also on the mic. He's a natural. So you know, I do feel it's time to start taking Mickey seriously.
Yes. Now the problem is, and I see this, and it's actually the same problem that Sage had. The guy's had 4 fights.
Yeah.
He's really new in the sport. He hasn't fought anyone good, and there's almost this thing of he just won in a semi-main event. So now who can we put against him at that level? And it's like he really shouldn't be at that level. Him and Sage was a very unique fight. It was the right fight to make.
Right.
You know, as soon as they announced, I go, it's the right fight to make. I don't know if it was the right fight to be a semi-main, but
Yeah.
the problem is that he's got a lot of notoriety. So you almost have this thing of trying to put him with a name opponent, and he probably shouldn't be with a name opponent for another
Right.
3, 4 fights.
Yeah.
Maybe longer. You know, he's got to develop. Again, it's like you don't want to throw him to the wolves and we'll put him with like a name guy or a top 15 guy. It's you know, even with Sage, you know, you can see that, you know, he's you know, at a certain level. But I mean, he passed with flying colors this test. And Sage is 20 years old. Everyone, you know, because of how he looks and because of how much he was promoted coming in, it's so easy to resent him. But you've got to remember, it's like he's, you know, 20 years old. He's got to learn too. And you know, so. But again, he should. I think that they should both be kind of lower card guys. I mean, when I look at say like a Colby Covington, who fought tonight, you know, he's like well above those guys.
Yeah.
And but name wise, he's not. And that's the kind of guy who I could see like, moving up a little bit higher
Yeah.
and going against tougher guys. Well, these guys, I think that they both need like 3 or 4 fights against guys who's, instead of big names, maybe no names.
Right.
Get the experience and everything.
Yeah, plus I think about if any of them had been matched up with Colby, I feel like they would have lost to him.
Yes,
He's so
for
much
sure.
more experienced.
Yeah.
So it was an odd choice for a co-main event, but at the same time, the matchup made sense. So
I do think Sage needs to get out to a real camp. No disrespect to his father, but every fight he's been in, he's been so woefully out of his element when the fight hits the ground. And I don't think they can ignore that anymore. And as far as Sage and the trash talk, that was kind of fun. I like seeing the Dark Sage come out, and Dave, maybe at some point, Sage has to do his Mr. Backlund thing where he just snaps, and, where he becomes a bad guy once and for all.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's going to be funny because Sage is either going to be one of 2 things. Sage is going to go down, and again, we're not going to know for probably 5 years. He's either going to go down as like one of the great flops in UFC history, this guy who came in with all this notoriety that never went anywhere, or, he's going to be a star and we'll look back and go, you've had a past test and you get knocked down a few times. And that's really, for most fighters, you're going to have that. You're not going to have guys, it's how many Khabibs are there where it's boom, 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 always win. Everybody, Tony Ferguson's had losses. Everyone's had losses, on the way up. And especially for a 20-year-old being in this profession, in this business, because I think he's still the youngest guy in the roster.
yes.
So, he's got a ways to go.
What did you think of Joban's win over Perry?
Impressive performance. Joe Bonds seems to have had a pattern of he kind of, before tonight, he's either like fights up to his level of competition or down to it. But today he just showed a really mature and I thought a smart performance because everyone knows that Mike Perry has his one weapon basically, and he didn't allow himself to be goaded into Mike Perry's fight, and just a brilliant kickboxing performance.
Yeah, great counters, great strategy. The one thing I thought with Mike Perry, though, was it was exposed that Mike Perry could get to a certain level. Like the last fight, he had some problems. Before that, he was looking like a killer. And the whole thing is that when you look like a killer, you think, okay, I'm getting by with this weapon. But when you get to the top, you need all the different tools. And he really, if he's going to advance, he's going to have to work on not sitting there waiting for that one knockout punch.
Right.
Because guys like this will, he fought the perfect fight. Joe Bond fought the perfect fight
Yes.
against Mike Perry.
Yeah, he actually fought a very controlled fight, which was great. Perry fell for the same thing round after round after round, didn't make any adjustments. So
Yeah.
it was good. Tell me what your fight of the night was.
Loved the Leslie Smith and Irene Aldana fight. It was, to me, it almost looked like the way Leslie Smith came out in the first round, it was like the lesson that she took from the Cyborg fight was I should just fight like Cyborg. I mean, she was just a monster out there. And then Aldana had her moments in the fight, and, it was clearly Leslie Smith's win. But, Aldana gave a decent acquitting for herself as well, showed a lot of tenacity in the face of a very determined opponent.
Was Smith Aldana your fight of the night too, or did you pick?
Okay, so here's the thing. I came in the third round of that fight. The place is going crazy. So, and afterwards, everyone said it was the fight of the night. But the next fight with Emmert, it was like I thought that fight was awesome. So when looking at people's comments, it was like the poor Morono fight after Alex Morono's fight. Those people were booing, and I'm going like, this is like a really good fight.
Yeah.
And I could just figure it's just like a week before when you have these 2 great fights in a row. The next fight, the people they get so I don't want to say spoiled, but kind of.
Yeah.
It was the Morono fight was like the Holloway fight the week before.
Yeah,
where,
I felt
where
like that too.
It was a really good fight, but because it followed such 2 incredible fights.
Yeah.
And I guess the same thing here. But I thought of what that fight, I loved that fight, and I can't wait to go home and watch the Leslie Smith fight. So they were, the 2 big fights of the night.
Yeah, I actually did feel that about the Morono fight too. I thought, oh, this is a very good technical, actually a very good fight. And I was disappointed when the fans started booing. I was like, oh, just give it some time. It's a different style fight. They're not going to, throw haymakers at each other. Learn to appreciate this. But I'm sure it's just hard. It's hard to bring your adrenaline down after getting so excited after the
Sure.
end.
I think they should just save it for the next Sacramento Kings game.
Yeah, and the other thing too is with both of those, with Leslie Smith and with Emmert, you had local fighters.
Yeah.
So the crowd
Sure,
was that much more into it. The crowd was really into those 2 fights.
Yeah.
At the level far beyond most prelims.
Yes.
So and when the crowd like this, as far as the crowd went, when this crowd wanted to like something, they were a great crowd. At other times, they were a little bit of a spoiled crowd. So, but it was a fun crowd, and it was a cool building. First time in the building. This is a great Fight City because of Urijah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best shows, that I ever remember. The Urijah Faber Jens Pulver show was like a landmark show, and so many of the other ones in this building, were, this. I got a lot of great memories of going to fights in the city.
I want to close out with your favorite Uriah memory.
Favorite Urijah memory, man. This is going to seem like a weird pick, but his fight against Jose Aldo, which I know that he lost in a pretty one-sided manner, but the reason why I remember that was because that was the WEC's big coming out party. That was they went up to pay-per-view. It was a sellout crowd or close to it at Arco Arena. In that whole night of fights, there was the Korean Zombie against Leonard Garcia, which was like an all-time classic, a brawl. Brad Pickett fought Demetrius Johnson. That was a great fight, just all down the line. So a fight that he lost in a one-sided manner might seem a little weird, but it was a testament to his legacy. The mere fact that show not only existed, but that showed the UFC like, hey, this has legs. We should do something bigger with it.
Yeah, I mean, that show and the Pulver show, to me, are the two most important fights for that weight class ever, because the Pulver, the TV rating that the Pulver show did, I mean, there's been, like, when I was looking it up, there have been, maybe 2 or 3 cable shows. I mean, the Fox shows obviously are going to do bigger, but as far as cable ratings, especially when it was on Versus.
Versus, right.
Yeah, to do a number like that was one of the biggest numbers Versus ever did. So it's like, that really showed the marketability of Urijah, and the fact that, if it wasn't for Urijah, we might have people going like, oh, nobody wants to see the small guys. I mean, he opened the door, and then that success on the pay-per-view, it was like, oh my God, we got to get these guys into UFC. So that was his contributions. I think that my favorite Urijah fight was the Mike Brown fight that he lost.
Me too.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because my memory is watching after the fight was over and Uriah's going back, and he's got both of these hands just so swollen. And I mean, he came really close to winning.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I don't, it might have been 4-1 in rounds, but I mean, the point is every round was competitive. And he was having to throw elbows because he couldn't throw punches.
Yes.
And he was never giving up in a thing where, he got 2 broken hands, It was such a gutsy performance. And I mean, I think one of the things is, Urijah was almost, because he's got the face and everything like that. I think that at some point, a lot of people, when they see a guy like that, they'll go, oh, maybe he's skillful, but in a real dog fight, I mean, how tough is he going to be? And it's like, even though he lost that fight, it was like, you can't say, as a fighter, you can't say nothing bad about Urijah. He was, you put him in a war, and he's a warrior, as far as it goes. And even the Aldo fight, it's like the guy never quit. And I mean, he was outgunned in that fight big time. But, he stayed there for the 5 rounds, and he took a beating, for those 5 rounds. And, again, how many guys stopped him? Very, very few in his career. And, it's a great career. I mean, I know, like, we'll look back and go, he never won the UFC title, but the WE title was equivalent to the UFC title.
Yeah.
He was champion for a couple of years, and he did lose all those championship fights, but there were, a couple that he came close. And, up until probably, a year and a half ago, I mean, the guy was probably number 1 or 2 contender for so long in 2 different weight classes. I mean, it really is an incredible career.
To me, Faber is a no-brainer Hall of Famer.
I agree.
I mean, he was a world champion and the top-of-the-line guy for a long, long period of time. And then when you throw in his contributions to the sport, what he meant for his weight classes, and also having a top-notch gym, put that all together, and it's just no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more pivotal guys in the history of the sport. I mean, again, how many guys changed the sport? And he did. And not only that, but like with his gym and recruiting, and with Chad Mendez and Benavides and all these guys who he basically brought in. I mean, he brought in top contenders. Even Paige, right?
Yeah.
But he brought in all kinds of guys, and they're all the one thing with the Team Alpha Male Fighters is that they've all got guts.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty positive. It's like they've all been through the losses, and they don't crack on the losses. They come back and everything like that. So, and he's a success story in this business. I mean, it's sometimes there's a lot of guys, and again, we talked about earlier with the sad endings and everything, and I really believe that, like, whether it's in business or whatever, 10, 15 years, Urijah is going to be someone who we look back and he's going to be doing great in whatever he is doing, whether it's in real estate or running a gym or whatever it is.
Entertainment, all the things that he was saying on stage.
Yeah. I mean, he'll be somebody, and it'll be one of those guys where it's like, he was a superstar fighter, and if nothing else in this community, I mean, I think he's like, was part of the soccer team or something like that, whatever it is. But I mean, he'll be a guy in this town where the people in the city, he's one of our local sports heroes who did good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He won't be a broken down sports hero. So, I think that, like, here, he's going to have a long, long legacy.
Yeah. With that, we will say good night from Sacramento. Thanks for joining us for UFC on Fox 22, and check us out on YouTube for all of the other scrums and videos and interviews that happened all week long, and all of our photos on MMAfighting.com, and all of the articles as well. And tune in on Monday for the MMA Hour.